Hi everybody, thank you for tuning in this week. And this week we have Diego Merlos from MBM Credit Solutions. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Go ahead and tell me, even though I just said it, go ahead and tell me your name and the company, and then we'll get started from there.
So Diego Merlos with MBM Credit Solutions.
And Diego, I've been knowing you for some time, just like your brother. I appreciate you taking the time. Let's get right into the myths of credit. And not only that, Diego, you're very proficient on talking about financial resources and how that relates to credit. So can you break that down for our viewers for us?
Yeah, I think depending on where we learn credit from, which is typically our parents or our culture or our environment,
right,
we typically learn certain things, right? And I can only tell you about my culture. And in my culture, using credit should typically only be used during emergencies, right? Or to buy big things, right? To make big purchases, you know, like a refrigerator, a TV, something like that. And for those of us that don't understand credit, 1/3 of our score, 35%, is actually based on your history. Credit essentially is just borrowed money, right? Somebody says, hey, here's a credit card, this is a limit. You need to borrow money for a car, borrow money for a home. So we need to think not only as a consumer, but also as the bank. So the bank wants to know that we can pay them back. And how else do they know that besides utilizing credit? So we need to establish a payment history. So the people who aren't using credit are doing themselves a disservice, right? We need to use credit on a daily basis. We just need to understand how to use that credit properly and effectively.
I'm glad you brought that up because my daughter is looking for an apartment, and she called me 2 days ago and she said, literally, Dad, they said my credit's too new. But she just bought a house, she just bought a car, but the house is, I think, it's maybe 6 or 7 months, 8 months. So let's just go from college students now, right? We're in a different era than when you grew up, than when I grew up. Someone coming out of college, what would be your suggestion for them to build credit? So, like my daughter who's 25, you know, she bought a house and a car, they're still pegging her saying, your credit's too new.
Right. So credit should be established as soon as possible. So when we become adults, right?
So 18, would you suggest
18.
that? Okay.
At 18 years old, right? Again, a lot of people think that that's daunting or that people may be too young to handle credit. But if we can teach people how to use it effectively, again, it can be very, very successful. So at 18, when anybody wants to borrow money, our first line of defense should always be our bank. Right?
The bank that you bank with
who you bank with. And you need to have bank accounts and you need to use your account. Right? So the people who use cash and people who keep money at home, again, they're not utilizing it correctly, because if we want to borrow money, we need to make it seem like we have money. So when we utilize cash, when it's in our pocket, when we have a shoebox under our mattress or anything like that at home, it's not working for us, right? Nobody knows that we have the money. So we need to start with having and establishing an effective banking relationship, right? So once we have that, when you want to borrow money, I would think that people are going to borrow money from someone that they know opposed to someone they don't. Correct? So I'm going to borrow money from my mom before I ask to borrow money from you. Because my mom knows me. Right? She knows whether I'm responsible or not based on whether I make my bed or do the dishes. Right? So the bank is the same thing. They know you. For majority part, they know how much you make, because more often than not, you're getting direct deposit. They know whether you're responsible or not because of your non-sufficient funds or your overdraft fees. And again, they know how much you could be able to pay back based on your average balances. So again, it's important that we have money in the bank and that we use it effectively, and that when we want to apply for credit, we do so with the bank.
Let me ask you, is there a big distinction, and hopefully you can discern this myth, between banks and credit unions? Do I have an advantage if I do the same process you're talking about, but I'm with a credit union?
I believe it comes down to preference. Right? In my personal opinion, major banks, credit unions, they're going to be relatively the same.
Got it.
What I continue to hear from people is that credit unions have better interest rates, right? And that may be true, but at the same time, when we effectively know how to pay certain things like credit, mortgage, a loan, that shouldn't be a determining factor, because we can teach people literally how to pay accounts and not pay interest. Right? It's because of amortization. Right? So that could be the difference. I personally prefer a major bank, you know, your Bank of America, your Wells Fargo, or your Chase, opposed to a credit union. Simply because, well, can you tell me of a credit union?
Westcom or First Financial.
Okay, so where's our Westcom?
Well, it's kind of, I know because my cousin banks there, but it's off of Milliken out here in Rancho Cucamonga. And First Financial, man, they were right there on 6th and Haven, but I don't know where they went now.
Can you tell me where the another one is?
Yeah, I don't know.
I can tell you 10 Bank of Americas in a 5-mile radius.
Right, okay.
Right? Or a Chase or a Wells Fargo. Right? So that's what I like about those banks.
Okay.
Right?
Accessible.
They are accessible. And a majority of the banks now are consumer driven, right? It's all customer experience.
Right.
I know that a lot of people think that when you're with a big bank, you're just a number. And to be quite honest with you, a few years ago, you probably were, right? So I had banking experience, 4 years as a personal banker and a business specialist.
Right.
So a few years ago, it was very sales driven,
okay.
right? If I wanted a bonus, I needed to hit my sales. How many accounts can I open? How many loans can I do? Loan volume, credit cards, partner referrals, etc.
Right.
But because of what happened with one of the banks, so what they were doing is our sales goals are too high. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make up a social.
Right.
Unfortunately, these socials belong to people who had passed away.
Right.
So it's not like they were opening up the obituary and saying,
right.
John Doe died, let's open up an account for him. But they said, we need to take that out. It's unethical, right? So sales have been removed from the equation. So now it's all customer experience.
Got it.
Right?
So change that dynamic.
Exactly.
Okay.
So customer experience. So when you have Bank of America, Wells Fargo, that's how they get their bonuses now.
Okay.
Right? It's based on the survey that, James, you went into the bank today. Can you rate us on 1 to 10 on whether there was somebody to greet you, right?
Gotcha.
Did they do things right the first time? So again, the banks, they are big, they are everywhere, but it's more customer driven now, customer relationship, customer experience.
Okay.
So that's why I prefer the major banks.
Good. All right, so now give the viewers a little bit about your background, MBM Credit Solutions, how you started, where you've come from, and where you're at now.
Okay, so I started at 17 years old.
Okay,
right? Like
your brother.
So just like my brother, right? So we're not twins, contrary to popular belief. He is 4 years older than I am. So when I was 17, he was 21, and he had been doing loans for 4 years, right? Again, our parents are entrepreneurial and have always taught us to try to do things on our own and see how we can grow and expand.
Right. Okay.
So, of course, it was kind of like Succession. Why don't you try to do loans, right? Wasn't really my thing. Right. So a lot of the time, especially when you're 17 and your brother's 21, go get me coffee. Excuse me?
Right.
Tell my mom when we get home, right? Because I'm not your assistant.
Right.
So it was a little bit, I wouldn't say tension, but it was just, brothers being brothers. So it was take care of the small, tedious things that I can't do right now, right? As you're learning. So it was talking to the realtors, talking to the appraisers, things like that. And then this is something that somebody in the office was familiar with, right? He had been part of collections and things like that. So we understood that things could be removed from somebody's credit, and that's what I gravitated towards.
Okay.
Right? So again, can't really be in the same office as my brother. Let me gravitate towards this, and I just kind of ran with it.
Got it.
It called my attention, and it was something that, luckily for me, I was pretty good at.
So you started with collections?
No, I started with credit.
Oh, started with credit. Okay.
Right,
Got it.
So doing the credit and removing negative items from people's report, right? So collections, trying to dispute late payments and things like that. So I did that for some time, but a lot of jobs in between out of necessity, right? I've worked at a restaurant, I've worked at a warehouse, I've fueled trucks, I've done all that. Meanwhile, still doing the credit thing kind of on the side, though.
Right.
And then, in 2000, I want to say 2010, 2011 is when I started working at the bank.
Okay.
So when I started working at the bank, my first day I learned 3 very important things. And about the myths of credit, on how I needed to be able to get myself those bonuses. So my first customer was a gentleman. He had a 715 FICO score.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Did not get approved for a credit card.
Wow.
Right? So I looked at it and it's just like, okay, he has a 715 FICO. I know that's good credit because I know credit.
Right.
How is he still not getting approved, and why? And I need to know because I need to make a bonus because I need to put food on the table.
Absolutely.
Right? So I call my underwriter and then I say, hey, I wanted to know why he got declined. And they said the proportion of balances were too high. So I'm literally on the phone my first day and I'm like, they said your balances are too high.
Right.
Oh, well, he says he pays them off at the end of the month. Okay, well, today's the 16th. That doesn't work that way.
Right.
So then I needed to find out what it was that I needed to do to get him approved so that I can get my bonus.
Right.
So then that's where I started to develop and understand what the bank is looking for in order when it comes to credit. not only with credit, but managing the relationship that it has, and why one person got approved and why one didn't, and how to stretch out that dollar further, and the importance of managing your credit effectively and efficiently to avoid fees, to be able to be lendable, because being lendable is, in my opinion, one of the more important things in life.
Absolutely.
All right. So how do we present ourselves? And then because of the mistakes that we may have made, or the circumstances that we may have faced, our credit does not actually represent who we really are, right? And a lot of people will judge us and choose to or not to do business. And it could be unfair at times, because again, it could be because of a circumstance or a situation. So then that's where I was able to start piecing up the education that we provide for people today. Is not only credit driven, it's basic finance. It's your accounts, your cars, your loans, your credit cards, insurance, things like that.
So when people come to you, they get a complete package.
Absolutely.
It's not just the average, let's say, ad that you see on Craigslist or you see on Instagram and say, hey, we fixed credit and we'll show you this 580 score, but now it's 680. You give them the whole layout as to how to be financially savvy, not just with your credit, but overall.
Precisely. So, our model is provide value through education. And that's what we try to do, is to try to help educate people. Because the removal of information, unfortunately, is not up to us. Right? It may come off, it may not. We hope and we pray that it does. But we look at alternative methods to be able to not only increase people's credit, but to help them propel themselves forward in any future given situation.
Gotcha.
Right. So again, it's providing value through the education and showing people what has to be done and why and how important it is.
So if there's a viewer out watching right now and they're saying, okay, Diego, I'm going to contact you, or I want to contact you, but what can they do right now to get, like, what is something that, I don't know, it's a general question, but I don't know if everyone can do it, but what could one person do right now to help boost their credit score?
To help boost your credit score, I would say would be educating yourself on what's on your credit.
That's the first step.
That's the first step, right? You can't know where you're trying to go if you don't know where you're at.
Exactly.
Right? So a lot of the times it can be daunting. It's something that I myself, when I have had to rebuild my own credit, did not want to do. I did not want to look at the late payments or the collections or the debt that I had or where I was at. It's hard to accept, again, where we're at. And it's hard to think that we can move forward knowing where we're at.
Correct.
But it's identifying where we are.
So with that being said, do you have any preferences or referrals for the people like Credit Karma? You see all these commercials. Who should they go to pull their credit with that first step?
Right. So
recommendations.
It'll be a little bit different. There is a myannualcreditreport.com. You're entitled to a free credit report from each of the bureaus every 12 months. But that will not provide you with a score, right? So it'll just give you individual bureaus and the information pertaining to that bureau. Credit Karma, I don't recommend, simply because there's 3 credit bureaus and they only provide information for 2. Right? And with Credit Karma, people need to understand Credit Karma is a platform. I've seen people with a 400 FICO score and they're offering you a credit card. They're not going to let you borrow the pen to sign the application. But it's a platform and people pay for ad space. Right? So Credit Karma, it is good because it's free and you'll be able to have access to 2 of the bureaus. But, myannualcreditreport.com or I use Identity IQ is a site that we're partnered up with. And then with anybody who can pull a report with that and provide us with their login information, we can import it into our system and then provide them with a complimentary credit analysis and a consultation as well.
Oh, wow.
So then again, at least they know where they're at and what are the things that need to be done to get them where they need to be.
I'm glad you said that as well. So a lot of credit companies make you pay a fee up front. Tell the viewers about your process and how you work. So if I come to you or someone comes to me like, hey, Diego, I'm ready, what do I do? Or what do you do, I should say?
Well, first we try to get information, as much information of what you're trying to accomplish, what goals you're trying to accomplish, and what those timeframes are. Right? So once we can kind of get an understanding of what you're trying to accomplish, again, we provide a complete complimentary credit analysis and consultation. The only thing would be a $25 fee to the credit company so that we can get access to that information. Once we get access to that information, again, we provide a credit analysis. We review it together over the phone, and then we would set up a time for people to come in and then come up with a specific roadmap to guide them to where they need to be.
Because everybody's different.
Absolutely.
But you do give them the face-to-face time.
Absolutely.
Because there are a lot of companies who just stay over the phone, you never meet them, or you meet a representative because they work for a company, but that's good that you actually sit down with them and go over it?
Especially during the educational portion, right? Because through trying to remove negative information, and while we're simultaneously trying to do that, we need to educate people on the other aspects of credit, on alternative methods of increasing their score.
Okay.
It can or it should be done with as much attention as possible. And in my experience, is when it's face to face, right? We try to use real life examples. We try to make sure that we incorporate whatever type of learning you're familiar with, right?
Okay.
Whether you're a visual learner, we're writing things down on the board. Whether you're auditory, you're obviously hearing me. Or whether you're kinesthetic and you're writing things down, I write them down with you and I say, put this here, this goes here, this, whatever it may be.
Okay.
So it is very personal. And again, it's very, very detail oriented on what we try to do.
What you give them. All right. Now, do you partner up, and it's maybe a silly question, but just for the viewers, if there's any lenders or real estate agents outside just of regular consumers, do you partner and help them through that process if they have buyers that aren't there yet or right on the cusp to help them get to the next level?
Absolutely.
Okay.
For example, we work with a couple of your clients.
Okay.
We have a few lenders, real estate agents, anybody who can benefit from this is more than welcome to, reach out.
Right.
Primarily, we do focus on the home loans, but whatever the goal is for the client, that's what we try to make sure that we try to attain. Not everybody wants to purchase a home.
That's true.
Sometimes people need to purchase a vehicle.
Right.
Sometimes people need to apply for their first credit card. But we have many, thankfully, partnerships with, lenders, realtors, actually a couple auto dealerships, whatever it may be, things like that.
It's a good network. So is it ever too late to start? For somebody who's watching says, damn it, I just think that, I'm 50 or 60 and it's just too late. I don't want to use my credit. Is it ever too late to go ahead and get your credit fixed?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Right? While we're breathing, we're probably using forms of credit, whether we know it or not. Right? Credit is needed for damn near anything.
True.
Right? If you want to get a job,
right,
you got to have a good credit.
Yeah.
Right? I know somebody who recently was trying to join the Army. Nope. Credit is not where it needs to be at right now. Apartments, homes, vehicles, anything.
Right.
And again, as my brother had mentioned earlier, I'm a very big proponent of OPM, other people's money, right? A lot of the times we don't lack resources, we lack resourcefulness.
Right.
And we don't know that the resources or the resourcefulness that we may have can facilitate and keep our money in our pocket while either using somebody else's money or risking somebody else's money, right? Because we're all at risk every time we use money.
That's true.
Correct? So would you rather risk your money or somebody else's money?
Right.
I always vote for somebody else's money.
Simple answer. All right.
Right?
What are your goals for 2020?
Same as it were in 2018, 2019, 2021. Just keep improving.
Right.
Keep trying to help people out. Put people into homes and facilitate, again, being lendable and educating. Right? Educating people from... I've done after-school programs, right? Kids from 5 years old to 13 and an after-school program. Or just like you said, it's never too late to understand or maybe improve what we already know, what we already have. Right? So the focus is always education, trying to help as many people as we can.
So Diego, tell our viewers, because we want to be inspirational with this, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, at some point, what have you gone through that was pretty tough in your life that you didn't give up on that can inspire someone else that's watching? If you don't mind sharing.
Yeah. I think I've been very, very fortunate to not have many negative experiences. But I think just life in general. I think everybody goes through life.
Right.
Everybody goes through life, and there's different variations of life, and you within yourself can go through different phases in life. Right? Jordan Peterson says, if you think hell's not real, just ask somebody who's going through chemotherapy or who's going through whatever situation they're going through. So just going through life and just wanting to continue to improve. To improve in all aspects. Right? Whether it's business, whether it's personal, the relationships that I try to maintain, whether it be with family, friends, work. It's just a constant struggle or a constant thing that we need to continue to do is to try to improve and to be consistent. And like I said, it's about making your tomorrows better than your yesterdays, right? Just pushing forward, striving, personal improvement. That's one thing I haven't been able to give up on. It's luckily our parents have taught us not to quit. Right? Not to quit when there's something that we want. and what I wanted is just happiness.
Right.
To be able to provide it for myself and my family and anybody else who I can cross paths with. If I can help anybody, then by all means, please let me know how. And it's not always credit. Sometimes people need a lending ear, right? Sometimes people just need to vent. It's, again, life is very difficult.
Right.
And some of us are more fortunate and some are more blessed than others. So if there's ever anything that we can do to facilitate and make things a little bit easier for other people, that's what my parents have been able to instill in us from such a young age.
That's a blessing. And it's interesting because you mentioned being a financial person and knowing credit. Most people in the financial industry, outside of your brother and a few others, when you ask them that question, what are your goals or what do you want to do or what do you struggle, like, oh, I've went through this, but I want to make $1 million or I want to become rich. So to hear the humility in your voice of being humble and just being so regular about life and happiness is something that needs to be heard, which is commendable because we don't hear that often. You know, it's most of the time it's like, oh, I want to buy a Ferrari or I want a Louis Vuitton belt. It's just craziness. You know how it goes. So yeah, that's good.
It's those are all good goals. Those are all very good goals. Just not my goals. Right. My focus is elsewhere. I've been trying to work on identifying certain things that I think I want and or deserve. Right. And some of those things are materialistic. Right. But that's not the purpose or the drive behind them. It's not because of something's expensive or because a car is expensive. But it is. There's a preference that people have. Right. And if I can gain my preference while helping others gain theirs, then it's a win-win.
Absolutely.
Right.
That's great.
So if your preference is Gucci shoes, hey, let's get everybody. Let's get everybody Gucci shoes. Right. Gucci's not really my thing though.
Me neither.
So
I'm glad to say that. So,
yeah.
So with that being said, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Absolutely.
I hope that you all have learned something through this series of videos that we're putting out. I hope that you've learned something from Diego. It's very important culturally for everyone to learn about credit and finance, and we just want to continue to bring you good value, good content, and good people like yourself, your brother, and many, many others. And thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Include yourself on those good people lists.
Thank you very much.
Because you're creating a platform and you're giving us the space and the opportunity to be able to do this. So thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Peace and hair grease.